Freshman Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz once again publicly roasted the incompetent Republican chairman of the Oversight Committee, James Comer, about his various lies and failures with respect to the failed sham Biden impeachment inquiry. And it's fun and hilarious, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as you know, if you've been following this channel, the relationship, the rivalry between James Comer and Jared Moskowitz is the stuff of legend. James Comer is the incredibly stupid, incredibly hypocritical, incredibly unprincipled Grand Inquisitor of the failed sham Biden impeachment inquiry. He's the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, and it's probably the most powerful and important committee in the United States Congress because it is the committee which most directly oversees and implements oversight of the executive branch. It's a lot of power, a lot of sway. But under Republican leadership, the entire effort has been about attempting to impeach President Biden, and they have repeatedly publicly face-planted. As you well know, because we've covered this, it was so bad that many of Comer's own allies in the Republican Congress and his allies in right-wing media, including on Newsmax and Fox News, repeatedly publicly called him out, often to his face, for his failures during this impeachment effort. That's how bad it was. And I'll also say before I play this clip, for context, the Republicans recently released a 300-page document that they didn't, with very little, fanfare, because they just couldn't deliver the goods. And they made the case, or they claimed, I should say, that President Biden committed the most impeachable offenses, the greatest case for impeachment in American history. In other words, that what Biden did was so corrupt, so impeachable, it's the greatest case to be made for impeachment in American history. And yet, they refused to recommend an impeachment vote. It's interesting, isn't it? Even though they have the majority, that they can't, that this case that they say is the greatest in history is so unpersuasive that they can't persuade all of their Republican conference to vote for it. Sounds like maybe Comer's full of crap and they actually failed to do their job spectacularly, and the evidence isn't there, and the case was incredibly weak, and that's why the Republican majority won't go for impeaching the president. Food for thought. With all of that in mind, here is Moskowitz roasting Comer yet again to his face in a humorous fashion for his various failures.
And look, I appreciate the kind words the chairman said about me on Newsmax the other day, calling me the court jester, so thank you, my liege. Appreciate that. But he said something else that I think really sums up what this committee has done. The chairman went on and said, my job was never to impeach. Well, that is interesting. So for 2 years, almost 2 years, we have sat here. Well, we have run impeachment hearings. Well, we have had cameras, hundreds of interviews, millions of dollars to spend. And now the chairman finally says, my job was never to impeach. He only says that because it didn't work out. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have my staff send this to your office. I would love for you to sign it. And I'm going to hang it in my office as a reminder, okay, of what this committee was used for. Okay, so I don't want to hear about bipartisanship when they destroyed this committee over nonsense for 2 years. I yield back.
Something tells me Comer's not going to sign it. Something tells me, quite frankly, Comer's not smart enough to sign his own name. He may need somebody to help him, like grab his hand. It's a J, it's an A, it's an M. Come on, James, you got it. It's pretty pathetic what James Comer and the Republicans did. And what a damning tacit admission that Comer made. Well, my job as the chairman of this impeachment effort wasn't to actually impeach. What the hell were you doing, man? What were you doing? Tens of millions of dollars, nearly 2 years of time, effort, energy, and political capital spent. Instead of working bipartisanly with Democrats on things you can agree on, this is what you did instead? And you won't even pull the trigger on impeachment because you know you don't have the votes because your case is so damn weak? Don't you think that every Republican would love if the case could be made to impeach President Biden? Especially knowing what potential political harm that could entail for Vice President Harris? Why wouldn't you do that if you think the case was so strong? Hell, Democrats, we were willing to impeach Donald Trump regardless of the time of year because we thought it was necessary. We thought the case was there. We stood by our convictions. And you all won't do it. And you say it's the strongest case for impeachment in American history? You have to remember that in November, we are not just electing the next president of the United States. We are also electing senators and congressmen and women. And based on current projections, based on current polling, the House is most likely to flip. Okay. If you ask me right now, what are the odds? I would say, I think Vice President Harris will win the election as of right now. I think that Republicans are probably going to take the Senate. I hope not, but I think it's leaning more R than D. But I think the House is also leaning D. We are very likely, or much more likely than not, to flip the House. It's important that we do. And it's, by the way, important desperately that we keep the Senate. We have to have united control of government because Republicans will not play ball. I want you to think about this. Imagine we have Vice President Harris become President Harris, but a Republican Senate, and imagine we have Supreme Court vacancies. Do you think the Republicans in the Senate majority would allow the Vice President, now President, to fill a Supreme Court vacancy? I have no reason to believe that, especially given their recent track record of Supreme Court shenanigans. So set that aside. The Republicans had every opportunity for 2 years to work bipartisanly with Democrats. They chose not to. Instead, they chose to be hyperpartisan and incredibly non-productive, the least productive iteration of Congress in recorded history. That's on the Republicans. When Nancy Pelosi, Democrat, was Speaker of the House and Donald Trump was president and there was a Republican Senate, we still got more done. Because even in divided government, when Democrats are in the minority, they just understand how to co-govern and to work bipartisanly with Republicans than Republicans do with Democrats. Once again, demonstrating the moral and political superiority of the Democratic Party and Democratic politicians over their Republican counterparts. James Comer spent all this damn time, money, and effort on something that ultimately just went out with a whimper. He didn't even have the good grace to say, you know what? We're willing to impeach President Biden, but at the end of this exhaustive 1.5 year investigation, we concluded that ultimately the case wasn't there. We suspected that some things went on that were shady. We don't like this, this, and this. They could do their political hit job or hatchet job, but still say, you know what, we just don't think that the case could persuasively be made to impeach the president, so we're not going to recommend impeachment because the evidence wasn't there. Instead, they try to have their cake and eat it too. Damn it, this last 1.5 years, it was time and money well spent. We did such a damn good job. It was perfect. No mistakes were made. All our claims were fully 100% backed up by evidence. It was perfect. Strongest case for impeachment in American history, but also we're not going to impeach. We just can't do it. So yeah, total dissonance. Jared Moskowitz is right to be outraged. He has right to mock Comer, and Comer should be punished along with his Republican colleagues at the ballot box by losing the majority. Every person should vote for Vice President Harris for president, a Democratic Senate, a majority, they should vote there, and a House majority run by Democrats as well, because clearly these Republicans are too stupid, too bad faith, and too dishonest to do anything other than what they've done so far, which is not a damn thing at all. And in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.